All right, folks, at this time, I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee to order September 19th, 2022. It is 5:03 p.m. First order of business to approve the minutes of the August 15th, 2022 Public Safety Committee. Motion by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Bob. Any changes, deletions, or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Item 2.1, it's a building inspector monthly violations report. Again, as always, these reports are provided to you in the supporting documentation for your review and comment at these meetings. Any questions about that monthly report? No? Okay. Item 2.2 is the year-to-date citizen complaint and proactive patrol. Again, provided to the council.
I just have one question about that one. How's the data collected for that?
Which one, the year-to-date, the proactive or the citizen?
The citizen.
Typically it's called, sometimes they'll send email, but you know, Jim wants to comment on it. Typically they either phone in or sometimes we'll get emailed in our office and we'll forward them downstairs. And then it's a follow-up from the building inspector's office.
It's pretty thorough and you guys get a lot of complaints.
Used to be a lot more, but I'm sure you noticed the proactive list has gone up quite extensively as compared to that complaint or citizen journey complaints. So
Very good.
Good information to have too.
It is.
I also asked Joe to send Jim up to talk about downtown garbage enforcement and management. This is something that we've been actively discussing. And if you want to talk about that a bit, you can talk about what kinds of thoughts you guys are having downstairs, what kind of concerns you're having. I am going to ask that you come up to the microphone so that people online can hear you. Thank you.
So downtown garbage is something we've discussed amongst a few different departments. Obviously, it's not. There's a legislative aspect, obviously, so it's not something that we can tackle on our own. We just kind of feel that there's a couple of changes that could be had that would definitely make some improvements. The majority of our garbage law is kind of tailored towards residential and multi-family homes, not so much commercial. There's a couple of aspects of that law that do help, but as you know, the few areas down there, I think maybe we've talked a couple times about where people are storing private garbage on city property. I just feel that kind of gives us some leverage in terms of at least requiring screening or the garbage is collected more routinely, and you know, there's a number of other things we discussed that certainly be able to debate. And obviously, we should probably coordinate that with other departments because you know, if it's something what we're talking about required, you know, different departments instead of requiring people to call the garbage way more often, you know, private haulers and interested in doing that. And they're going to probably rely on public works to do so. So I mean, certainly their input would be great. I don't know if it's something that we should you know, see about input from the community, but you know, this all came about a couple of years ago. I was particularly having an issue with the upper Port Street parking lot in here. All those multi-family buildings along Clinton Street, they store their garbage back there. It's all city property, and there's just I think 7 or 8 dumpsters back there. They're not labeled as to who's what. On top of that, there's a bunch of cans. At one point, it was just a lot of rubbish and garbage back there, and there was no big assignments here. So, sure, public works can pick that up, but they're funding the cost really.
Yeah.
So those are the issues that we're really against.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's outside of the realm to have departments come to the council with proposed legislation on what could potentially help. Without, the part of it is, yeah, we can create some legislation on it, but it would be helpful to have some guidelines from our department heads and departments who are out here enforcing and seeing it on a daily, getting calls on the daily, to then bring forth some type of outline or proposal, for legislation. I know we've talked about, going as heavy-handed as saying, you're in a special assessment district, you are going to use Plattsburgh garbage. Don't think that's gonna go over well, and maybe that's a little too heavy-handed, but if there is proposed legislation recommended to help alleviate this, I think we can all look at downtown as downtown garbage is concerned, especially that area, and I've seen it, Councilor Kelly has seen it. Every Councilor Bob's probably seen it. But then also some of the other garbage cans that kind of overflow. That this all also came about when I was walking down Protection Avenue. And the grease garbage can was overflowing onto the sidewalk that had just been paved in your previous. And you look at it, you're like, come on, it's an alleyway, but this is brand new stock, right? It just looks, no pun intended, looks like garbage.
And a lot of that stuff is also within the city.
Exactly.
Well, and especially for businesses, I think we need to have a high expectation, of their maintenance and their participation in helping ensure that their areas
Yeah.
are maintained appropriately. And like I agree, Chris, we rely on you guys for your expertise in this area. We don't know, what it takes to make this work, but I know screens have come up before too. That sounds like a good idea to me. So any suggestions staff would love to have across the table.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't seem like a lot to ask if someone who's storing their garbage on city property is provides screen.
Yeah. Continue work, I think just continue work with my office, if there is legislation, we'll bring on something and then work with the council on framing it so that it makes it work for the city downtown and for city businesses who need their garbage receptacles in that shared area, really. But anything else for Jim?
You and I have talked about this many times.
Yes.
One of the things we discussed was the possibility of do the downtown business owners have the same rules as homeowners as far as when you take your garbage can to the curb and when you bring it back? Are they under the same restrictions that?
The garbage law doesn't specify that it's specifically for residential households, but it's hard to really enforce that when a lot of the buildings just don't have. I mean, protection, it's a good example. They're really not. One thing I was gonna say actually is that if there's a way that we can incentivize property owners to store their garbage in a different way, remember the idea was, is it Language, where the green room used to be?
Yes. Yep.
We bought it last year and, we still don't want to work there so far, but he's planning to do a garbage room in the front of the facade. It would just be a door, all tile in there, so all the residents can store their garbage in there, and they'll have a lock, and it's not gonna be upset or anything, they just spray it all down to the tiles, something like that. I mean, certainly would. You wouldn't have a problem with people illegally dumping there. A lot of the times, especially protection element, there'll just be tires or mattresses and no one wants to claim it. And you can't really win on it. Right. So, yeah, I mean, technically the law, I think, does apply to those, but it's really hard to enforce if they don't have, there's certain places on City Hall place that you have a rear yard or rear parking lot, and they all keep their cans back there, and they don't actually bring it to the field, actually, they always go back there. But other places, they store it adjacent to parking lots or wherever they can, there's not a lot of room. That's kind of overarching downtown.
Yeah, room is bringing. Space is a premium, so whatever we do end up accomplishing, utilizing that space so that it looks nice. That is screened or picked up on a regular basis, or, we require like a month or a weekly pickup or something, something's gotta, we can come up with something that makes sense. It's a good balance, okay, yeah, thank you. Police department, monthly parking violations. Wanna, chat about,
We'll chat about whatever you like to chat about.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or reports or, just numbers, so, throw the reports. You got to answer any of the questions if you're having. They're all numbers, Mayor.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know, Mary, you recommend, mention this last month about the, GPS tracking system?
yes.
You want to discuss that or?
Memo provided to council, essentially outlining the GPS,
So they know what we're doing.
outlining the GPS, installation on the part of PV cars. It provides a significant amount of oversight. I don't want to call it control, but certainly the ability to manage those assets a lot easier, knowing where those vehicles are, meaning the track fuel usage, idle times, locations. I know that we at one point had zoned areas where we would assign an officer to a particular zone. Helps manage some of that work as well. And if there's anything else, any other insight that you'd like to share, Chief?
No, I think that's it, and certainly, we have. They tried to do this in the past, year or two ago, and whoever was in charge then wanted to put it in secretly, so when the officers knew it was there. Well, that's the way to operate, they're gonna find out, so we're very open about it, the guys know we have it, just. Be thoughtful, be professional, it's there, I'm not a believer in hiding it from the police officer, so they know that we interact.
Yeah.
Each of them know, and we let them know that, they just have to drive carefully, if they have an accident, we'll be able to tell what kind of driving they were doing, so it's something that will protect the city as well, so. And if they're doing their job and they're acting professionally, we should have a problem.
Yeah, I never thought of it like as a
Sneaky thing.
Big Brother's watching Big
Well,
Brother.
it was in the past, and the previous administration wanted to do it secretly.
Well, I think that's kind of backwards. It's like then it only has the effect that you want it to have when you caught
Yeah,
people
you-
not doing the right thing, where they know it's there, they're more
You're
likely.
making it a punitive thing.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, it's there, the city's watching us, we're watching you, I'm watching you as a chief, if the people are watching us, so just be respectful. And we're supposed to do that anyways. It's a non-issue for me. Should be easy.
Let's see, speeding violations, I didn't see that report in here.
Well, hopefully it's there.
Speeding and ticketing,
I don't have a 3.2.
You don't have any,
No, I have a.
I got parking tickets.
I have a 3.2.
violations, misdemeanors. Parking violations, laws, cases, control.
We had it all summarized, it looks like on this
Which one?
one.
Was that, I don't remember
3.3.
seeing that, just reading there. You sure that's one that was, we've been providing monthly, I can check with the lieutenant.
I got parking violations, monthly parking violations, monthly around animal control calls.
We got beans, I think we got tickets and stuff.
Thanks, guys.
On the first page, we got,
We have the SMR as well in there, so.
yeah, you got the SMRs, but we also got, all I see is arrests, violation of misdemeanor and felonies, animal control, parking. I do not see tickets. Is that what
Yeah,
you-
provide that, yeah.
If you're interested in that, I'll ask the lieutenant, maybe they
Yeah.
provided that in the past, we will have it next time.
Now, and just to quantify that request, I know that we've had a number of hotspots throughout the city.
Yes.
That we have been focused on Cumberland Ave,
Right.
Stem Ocean Creek, North Catherine, places like that, where people are like, they're calling explicitly talking about these areas. And we want to at least, have some answers and show that we are being proactive in this.
Yeah, and I think we can track that to impact, we can track it, because I know when we've had those problems, I've had the emails from you folks that we sent from there, so we'll be able to tell. How many tickets were written, what kind of tickets were they speeding, so that's something we'll be able to tell.
Well, and with respect to the Cumberland Ave, I haven't gotten any recent complaints and I have gotten thank yous from many members of that neighborhood for our
Yes.
swift action. So thank you and to the rest of the department for following up on that. I do have a question. Chris, and this, do we know when I know we had mentioned that we had some of those flashing signs, I think we said we have 4 of them.
Yeah.
Do we know when they're gonna be?
That's DPW and I'll
Okay.
follow up with that. Just. Beth, can you just make a note, and send Mike a message on that, please?
Thank you.
Yeah, so there were the speed control signs
Mhm.
that showed the speed limit
Mhm.
for those hotspots that we want to control. And then also the crosswalk control signs that we intended to install at Broad Street.
Right.
The Broad Street crossings.
And I will. We'll have one for next month, speed, I think it's.
Sure.
Also, something quick regarding the complaint from. That you had sent in. And this gentleman, this person has made numerous complaints in the past, as you
Yeah.
saw. He also made a complaint to the FBI about us. The FBI called us last week and it's unfounded, there's nothing credible. And we cooperated with them, we gave them all the information we have, so they just let us know that it's not going in.
That's,
I wanted to let you. know.
I appreciate the efforts everybody made
Yeah.
in resolving the issue.
No problem. Anything else?
Thank
Okay,
you so
thank you.
much.
Yep, see you.
Just to touch on police department payroll, that's been provided a monthly public safety payroll report. Police department's tracking at about 72% of their annual payroll. There's 28% of the year left, so they're tracking a little bit of ahead of their use. But if you look at their overtime payroll, they are tracking significantly higher than what was budgeted. So, you know, just something to keep in mind, because as we start to wrap up the end of this year and look to make budget adjustments to make these departments whole, we'll have to keep that into consideration.
And it's certainly something we need to talk about when we're budgeting and what you want to do for next year. And we'll discuss that next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Chief.
Thank you.
4.1. Fire rescue report.
Fire rescue report, we're looking at our EMS assist has gone up, so we're getting a higher number in our fire rescues. Severity of calls has changed a little bit. We've been having a lot more of advanced life support. So we've been tracking that and keeping an eye on it and seeing how we can do. Our training for EMS has gone up. So hopefully we'll see that come down once we have a higher level of care. At the EMS report, we're seeing is on our 4-year average going January through August, tracking 120 calls more over the average of the last 4 years. So our EMS call volume has gone up as we've been showing all along. So that's just something again that we need to keep an eye on because we're right at our breaking point of being able to handle calls. In fact, we can't handle all of the ones we want. As we said before, we're giving us 600 calls that are needed to be handled by mutual aid, and that doesn't fall under mutual aid, that end up doing the service. So that's something we need to look at, make sure that we're keeping our citizens safe with having the proper EMS coverage. Yeah, that's
Payroll and overtime, again, looking at the fire department's payroll, we've used about 56% of it to date, the regular payroll. And we only have 28% of the year remaining and 43% of the budget remaining, so we're tracking well ahead of that payroll number.
I believe it's about 167,000. If I did the quick math on it, so
For what?
that we're ahead. And so, but we're ahead in that, and we're negative in the overtime, and that's the fact that we're down members. That's why we're up in our 1,100 account in the overtime, is we're trying to fill those critical positions. That's something we always see. It's a teeter-totter effect. If one goes up, the other one goes down.
Is that something that like we'll be able to, since we have like potentially be extra run of regular payroll, we would be able to shift some of that over.
We will, I think that, if we continue to track,
This way.
if we do continue to track this way, we're gonna be over in both, even if we make a shift over, from regular to overtime. You know, I think that at the end of the day, it seems to be more philosophical how many people we put on this department to offset overtime versus increase regular payroll. So, yeah, you know, we have to also consider that calling people in for overtime or keeping people on, it's not called for staying, but it's staying over, being held, that does cause issues, concerns within the department, in terms of morale and, the health and safety of our department, members of our department, especially if you're on EMS, if you're on the ambulance, that's a constant fault. You're out all of the time, you know, that's challenging when you're doing that for 48 hours straight. Not safe, but it's understandable. I think most people, I'm not making an argument, it's most people understand that it's a concern to have people on for 48 hours at a time. Absolutely. And not being allowed to go home, not being able to see their kids and stuff like that, so. It's balanced.
Why do you say that there will be a problem at the end of the year with regular payroll? It's tracking so well.
Oh, no, I mean, like with overtime, without doing the numbers, it looks like overtime would chip into the regular payroll.
Well, outpace the regular payroll.
Correct.
Okay.
So looking at, if we go by our historical data, we're coming into a time that we just got done with summer, and we knew that the summer was gonna be, everybody's taking their vacations and their accruals in the summertime, which means that there's overtime because of the way that the staffing is right now, there's overtime every day. So it's rolling, so that's where you see those larger numbers in that time period. And we'll see it start to wane down a little bit. You know, it's still gonna be there, but it's not as prevalent as it was during the summer.
How many people are insured?
Three, but I also have, we had one person that was injured, when an ankle injury came back, so he's up. I have another person that just went out on another knee injury, so I'm down 2 positions right now. So if I have 33 of workable, I have 31. And when you try to break that out into 4 platoons, and you can have 2 people off, you'll see where the issue comes in. We have 7 people daily that we need critically, so. It's the numbers.
You two gave us a lot of thorough information there. Chief. Much appreciated.
I'm trying. I've got plenty more.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Any other questions, Chief?
Budget adjustments next. Yeah, all right, so we've had several major repairs that needed to be done to 2 of our apparatus. One of them was an ambulance. It may sound trivial, but it was an air conditioning issue. That's a Department of Health Part 100 requirement. You cannot have a patient compartment in the back that is not being able to be kept at a steady temperature that puts it out of service, so it needs to be fixed. That is an ambulance that is an 07, and we've been having problems with that yearly. It's a constant problem. Seals wear out, and as you pressurize it, then another seal lets go. It's just something we need to be aware of. The large portion of this is for our fire engine that's normally stationed at station 1. That was a first generation DEF emission system that was done. There's a fluid that you put in. I don't know if those diesel systems. It's to lessen the particulates to come out. And we had a complete failure of the system. So the complete failure of the system is a $16,000, which was difficult to swallow, but we have to get it done. Otherwise, the truck does not work and we will move forward. So we're in the process of getting parts. They had to be manufactured. They were specific to the engine. So it's been down for approximately 5 weeks. We've been using a reserve engine in this place. That was unanticipated, we can look at our historical data and chart along, okay, we need brakes, we need springs, there's a constant that you go through. Never buy it to replace the DEF system, this was the first vehicle that we had with, and they last about 10 to 15 years. This one is at 10-year mark, so. It's tracking where it should be, but that will be something we look at in the future for budgeting, so we don't end up in this issue.
All right, draft resolution, budget adjustment, general fund, fire vehicle parts and repairs, motion by Councilor Bob, second. Councilor Kelly, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, carried. Replacement ambulance, I know this came up a while back. This does address some concern that Chief has raised again to me regarding the viability of both ambulances that we currently have on the road, and I can let Chief expound on something additional concerns we have with aged infrastructure or aged vehicles that we have.
So a life expectancy for a frontline ambulance is 5 years, what we're looking at. Our ambulance we have at Station 1, that you'll see that it's always on the road, that's at its 5-year mark. If we make a purchase now or set aside the money and make the commitment, it's still 2 years till we get it. I'm at 70,000 miles on that vehicle, and if we look at that, I'm looking at over 90,000 by the time that I get a replacement. We are starting to see a lot of wear on that frontline ambulance with a lot of bearings, brakes. They're normal things which you see in any vehicle that you have. It's that this is a severe duty vehicle. That's what they classify as. So I just want to be clear that the ambulance, if we do a replacement, the ambulance in this frontline would go to a reserve mode and would be placed in service when the frontline had to go out for repairs, or if we wanted place it in if we had a second ambulance, if we were doing that. Well, we're currently doing, so it would be able to meet that role. But what this would do is take our frontline ambulance, which is the one we rely on, that does over 3,000 calls a year, it puts it, we maintain something that is reliable. If we do not do this in the future, we're going to end up with unreliable vehicles that are going to go out, they'll have no even stuff. We won't be able to transport people, won't be able to get their equipment there. So it's just something we need to look at. I know that we bonded out the last one, it works out to approximately $26,000 a year with the bond payments. Given that we're pulling in over 900,000 in revenue, it's one of those, it may just have to be something we look at as a cost of doing business for keeping these and keeping them on a rotation of every 5 years. If we do that, we're pushing this one 2 years, so it'll be 7. But after that, working on 5 years, we are always rolling one in. The one that's in a reserve mode, it's not going to be worth much or anything else. Got some thoughts on what to do with that. I'll discuss it with the mayor, and we'll go from. We'll see what we can do. Now, I just want to make sure that we're going to need to do this. Our engine that we're replacing that we already had approval on. Council Kelly, you remember when we set that back? And it's been 4 years.
Yeah.
It's constant, you know. It's well, and we did, and I thank you for that. I just don't want to see the same thing happen with the EMS unit that's running 3,000 calls for service. I mean, we're critical times. If it quits on the way to a call, that's problematic. We need, not only do we need to have personnel and equipment to do it, we need the vehicles to be able to transport it and get them there. It'll be reliable.
You're working on your budget now, right?
Yes.
For next year. Are you including this in your budget for next year?
In my budget for next year?
Yes.
No, it's a capital project, so it was in this year's budget.
So it will be in the capital budget.
Yes, it's capital expenditure.
So 2023 capital budget, you're planning to make your first payments on
No, it was in 2022's capital plan budget. We're bringing it forward so we could get the approval. It will be 2 years before we get this ambulance. We will not have to make a payment until we get the ambulance and actually change hands with money. That's my understanding. So we're looking at 2 years. What we're doing is just getting ourselves in line to get a vehicle. As we know, you can't get vehicles. When we talked to Mike Lissette, he'll say the same thing. We're now at fire engines, because we got in, we were at 750 days. Now we're looking at 900. So it's still pushing out further. We're gonna be good because we made the right rules, we got ourselves in line. That's what I'm asking, is that we make that commitment and get ourselves in line, be able to get this ambulance and maintain our fleet the way we're supposed
You're just gonna have to hobble along for 2 years
I
until
can-
that thing shows up.
to. Right, we'll do that, we're making, in my budget, I've continued to keep that, repairs of vehicles up a little bit. We're doing the best we can, we got DPW doing a lot of our maintenance work on it, they're doing a fantastic job, but there are things that they can't handle when it gets into, might be some type of a warranty issue or something specific, computers, it's the dev system. That was a Cummins specific motor issue. And they didn't have that available. The computers are astronomical, to be able to do the diagnostic for them to even,
Right.
but they've been doing a lot of work for us and helping us out a lot, and they're keeping our bridge together for now.
I like your idea of placing them every 5 years on a sort of regular schedule. And then making the ambulance that you're replacing your secondary or service.
That's-
I think that's a great idea.
And that's what we've been doing. In the past, it's just a fire engine's 15 years and aerial is usually 20 years if they're front line. We're able to push those a few years, that's their standard, but they start wearing out. We're in the Northeast. We've got a lot of in the roads have gotten better, but we're going through spring sets twice a year on a vehicle. That means we're snapping the rear springs on. Just a lot of weight, and anybody that does large trucks or anybody in construction will tell you that that's just the cost of doing business. That's what we're dealing with. So that's where we just want to move something forward so that we can make this resolution happen, or get a resolution so we can get ourselves in line and commit to in 2 years that we'll have this ambulance.
What's we've talked about this and I know that the medical director has also made some recommendations for easing the use of ambulances. And certainly I hear it all the time. It's why are fire engines in the ladder truck responding to EMS calls? And obviously I look at it like, as a layperson, I'm like, yeah, why is that happening? And that it doesn't seem like it makes much sense or should make much sense to do that. What is the thinking or what's the approach around using for a term here, fly car, or some other type of vehicle, non-ambulance, and certainly not a fire engine,
Right.
to respond to these types of emergencies? What's the thinking around that, and what's your departmental strategy or your interdepartmental thinking around using that type of technology versus, or that type of process versus driving an ambulance even?
Right, I'm looking at that now. Something that we've talked about in the past comes into manpower vehicles. So what are we gonna do? How's the flight vehicle work? Where's that person coming from?
And can you just so you just re-educate me as well as to let the council and people know, what does that mean to use a fly car?
A fly car would be a vehicle that would have an advanced life support provider on it. So you could, if you needed an extra set of hands, or a lot of times there's procedures that you're gonna do in the back, but you may not need the full contingency of a fire crew. And I'll get into that in a minute too, so people understand. So what it'd be is if they needed advanced life support, and we have a paramedic that's in a fly car, they'll take that vehicle. Think of a police car. They take that police car, they'll meet up with the ambulance, that guy will get out, get in the back, will perform everything, and leaves their 2 engines in, so we don't get the wear and tear in the vehicles. What that would involve is a smaller vehicle. We don't want to be running pickup trucks even, we just want to be running smaller SUV as a fly car. And that would be assigned to a certain position in the department, and they would be able to do that. We're looking at how do we break that out? How do we structure ourselves so that it wouldn't be clunky? And I don't know word more than that. We're trying to get it so that it flows right and that we have a process and a system. We're looking at it now. I know that Dr. Bombard, who is our medical director, has spoken to it. She's worked in a few areas that have done that. So we're looking at different models of how people have done it and which one would work better for us. We've been talking, I've been going to some training with other chiefs in the state. And this is something we pick our brains on. Okay, how do we do this? How is your response going? How do you do it? In trying to get some ideas together and then whittle them down to the best that we can do, and then we can work forward from there. It might require some investment in the vehicle, some more equipment. A certain amount of manpower on per day. We'll have to look at that, and I'll get everything together on it. The fiscal part of it, and then the operational. Get back to the fire engines. Fire engine goes if they need advanced life support, and they will usually bring one of their people or two of them, and they'll get in the back. There's a lot of procedures. If you're having something that's like, I want you to think of an ambulance not just as a transport, it is an emergency room that will bring it to your house, because that's what they can do. We run cardiac arrest in house, so don't bring them out. But there are multiple tasks you have to do rapidly and simultaneously in order to have a positive outcome. So, you've got people that are doing airways, people are doing circulation, people are doing IVs, somebody's brought up medication, another one's calling the hospital, letting them know we're doing documenting. And this is going on constantly throughout the entire call. You can get that with overdoses, you can get that with difficult breathings, it's not just cardiac arrest, you get it with trauma. So that's why you see those engines. If they, let's say they go in the level of care that is needed to provide a procedure isn't on the ambulance that day, they'll call for the closest engine. Say, if that engine has higher care. And
But why, that's the thing that I can't quite get my head around is. Why can't the ambulance be sent with that level of care?
we're working on that now. This is.
Because that's the big question, and
Right.
we're sending an emergency room to your house. Send the emergency room, don't send the emergency room, and then the other components need to come to the truck.
Right, well, that's the fly car. A lot of places will just send a BLS ambulance, and when they get there and they assess and they say, we need a higher level of care, and the guy gets in the car and calls the paramedic. So a lot of places will do that. This is gonna be a very fluid situation until we get it squared away. I want to do it sooner than later, because I think that we can find some efficiencies. I think we want to make sure that our level of care and that our response times to an incident are as good or better than they are now. We want to meet our.
I guess the question still remains for me is, if why not send the highest level of care that we possibly can, if that means everybody on the ambulance is ALS or
Right.
can provide ALS? Is that ultimately, is that what you're saying? We're preparing for that?
Yes, we're preparing for that.
And what does that mean?
That's people going to paramedic class. That's us working with the originals. As you know, we're working through a negotiations period now, how we're going to do that, how we're going to go about it. Opening that up and really trying to get the people to go forward. Right now, after this one bridge class is done, we're going to have 12 paramedics. So a third of our department will be paramedics.
And are those people assigned to the ambulance, or is it a matter of well, they get to pick and choose,
So-
paramedic, but they don't want to ride in the ambulance, they want to stay in that firehouse.
That comes into part of our labor negotiations about where you can move people and where people are going to be assigned. We've got some different ideas on that.
Because it really becomes frustrating, I think, to a point with council and community to keep hearing they're sending an ambulance and then they're sending a fire truck after, and then hearing you guys say, well, we need a fire truck, well, stop driving the one you got.
Yeah.
And I'm being a little bit I'm being a little facetious here, but I think that's certainly the sentiment I hear. And I don't, again, as much as you and I talk about terms of art and all the internal, I call it internal gobbledygook, around the terms that you all use, it's still very much for a lot of us, and we try to figure out what does this all mean and why this and why is that. And
one of the reasons why you're going to see that our senior people are the ones that got the paramedic first is because of the bridge program. Bridge program stated that you had to be an ALS critical care EMT. That's all it was offered before. Here, a lot of people were paramedics. We had one. They had gone to college and we hired. So what they did was New York State wanted to only have 3 certifications, not 4. So they got rid of critical care. They wanted to meet the national standards. So you have EMT, AEMT, and paramedic. They got rid of the critical care, but had a way for those critical care people to bridge to paramedic, and that was how they did it. Now, there were only certain people who were qualified to get into that bridge. So our junior people coming on couldn't do it. They have to go through a full paramedic. So what we did was to get paramedics on, we're putting them through the bridge program. And that's why you're seeing a lot of our senior people are those paramedics. But now, this next go around, when we get the originals, I have 6 people that are junior people that are looking at going to that. And then we start working. I know that Dr. Bombard is a very big proponent of having just about everybody be paramedic, and that would eliminate all the problems. And we're going to work towards what we can do with that training, how to get it done. They're just starting to get these original classes to get them rolling goods a few times around. So this is all new to the area. Paramedic was not something that we ever had before. Now we're trying to get, okay, how do we do this and how do we bring our people to that level? And we're talking 18 months, 2 years to be able to get them to a certain level of care. It's that much of classroom, clinical time, ride time in order to get certain, you have to have certain call types.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know. Just sitting from the outside, I think there needs to be a conversation about how we structure who's on the ambulance and who's not. If we have all the paramedics that we've just put through a class, not on the ambulance, it kind of defeats the purpose in some way or another. If we're not sending the best of the best, and that's what we want to be doing, is we want to be sending the best of the best. Because if somebody's there, you know, God forbid, if they only have 5 minutes and the other person's gonna be 7 minutes out, then,
Right.
you know.
Yeah,
If we're talking about providing the best care and the best safety, then I think it's an easy conversation to have about putting the right people there the first time and not waiting for them to show up at.
Right. And that's something we can, you know, that is ultimately the goal. If I was to pick my perfect department, it would be a full paramedic. Everybody can do everything. We're working towards that, and we're making progress. We're making good progress. And you and I can have more conversations, Mayor, about this, different ways of doing it.
That kind of flexibility tells me that it would also be very good for the budget. Is that a correct assumption?
Budget for having all those people.
Well, regular time versus overtime. Or the total payroll that you pay including overtime, seems like if everybody can do everything.
Yeah.
Need for overtime. And
Yeah, we still need a certain amount of people to write critical positions, so. I would have to do some analysis on it, look at it, and really dive down into how that would affect it. I know it would give us more flexibility, right? So that's ultimately what you want, because without flexibility, that does sometimes drive over. So we want to do that. Anybody have anything else?
No.
I would say I like that fly car idea.
It's something we could look at, and I think, I think that it could be positive. I want to make sure that we have all of our questions answered, and I've done the research on it before I bring it to you. I don't want to come up here and have a conversation, you ask me a question, and I have no idea. That's not helpful at all for any of us. So we'll work on that, and we'll try to get as much as I can done as fast as I can. And I've got some more trainings and some contacts in the state that I'm reaching out to, and I'll get Dr. Bombard in. And for their next training, we'll make sure that I have time to sit down and talk to her and have a real honest conversation about what does she think and how does she think. She's in operations in our department now and how things go. I know she's constantly pushing. She wants everybody to do everything. So, she's got, everybody's running through scenarios, whether it's their secretary or not. And her thought was, somebody comes through the door and has a medical emergency, you might be the only one here, you've got to deal with it. So she's that mindset, so she's very good. Let me go over some quick things with the assistant chief has done so far.
Yes, please.
All right, so with the new assistant chief,
in place. We audited our yearly training and developed a year-end plan on how to meet some of our critical needs that we're working towards, making sure that we're on point. We've been in touch with the state, seeing about authorizations for the assistant chief, so he can go to these authorization weekends for an authorization class. He can come back and now that he's authorized, he can give New York State classes if they get certificate. He can sit there and give it to every platoon, everybody gets it. We're developing. We've got 2 new training programs that he's working on for next week, so that everybody's got that lesson plans, your media stuff that you need to use it on, how we're going to do it, how we test efficiency. So that's all going to be next week. He's got that going. Let's see what else. We just did the foam trailer. So for New York State, they came up and ran through our foam trailer. We're part of the crude oil foam task force. So Plattsburgh was designated, and we have the foam trailer, which is it's $100,000 trailer that they let us use, and we are maintaining. We just did a class on it and done one 3 years in COVID. We did that. He's now developing an SOP on our responses to after having that training. Okay, how are we doing it? This is what we do. We're gonna have it all laid out. We've established the fire department as a CPR training center. Did that last week, working on it. That means that we're designated as a training center. We can train city employees in CPR.
And anybody, is that something that
We could do it.
to organizations, say, we provide CPR training and
We can do that too. We're in the infancy stage of this right now. We're in our department. We're working on it. That's something that's pushed forward. We're working towards that. So we're looking at it. This is not just, all right, let's offer to city departments and help offset them, because a lot of times they've got to do CPR training and they may have to pay for something or anything else. Cars is usually what they get you. But if we're giving the training, we can document that they've had the training and it meets all their criteria, they're compliant. There you go. All we've done is assign the assistant chief to Department of Public Works for the day.
And is that more of a cost savings or?
Cost savings.
It's a cost savings, right?
Cost savings, but we're looking at doing this out to community outreach, right? So how do we do this? Maybe have CPR days, or maybe, we really want to get involved with the community and get them involved in this. So there's no better for us when we show up at a cardiac arrest and somebody's doing compressions. That's you've got a much better outcome. So working on that. And today he trained DPW and water filtration employees in confined space.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so we have made sure that everybody's good and confined space is up and that they were good with it. In fact, John Ross sat in on, so.
This was just a reminder to council, it's part of the entry into the storage tanks that we have to clean, that we're scheduled to clean. Based on the water concerns that we've seen the last few weeks.
Right, so we wanted to make sure it's doing it in confined spaces, permanent required space. Through OSHA, we wanted to make sure you have to have a rescue team on site. So we're gonna have our confined space team on site, ready to go with secondaries and rescues. And part of that was to ensure that the employees that are doing the entries have up-to-date training. So we gave the up-to-date training today, leave entries tomorrow. We're gonna have and they're gonna be up there. So it'll be set up. And this comes into all of your paperwork and all your permitting and everything else. And the assistant chief's working with them and the department heads to make sure that that's compliant. So we hit the ground running.
I know that at some point you and I discussed the potential for doing this training with an assistant chief to help reduce overtime. How does that work logistically?
So what it is that it's just, so I'll give you an example. We have to do a bailout training every year for our bailout system. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, we carry harnesses, descenders, and ropes, so that if you get near a second story or above and you get trapped in your room, you have no other way of egress out of the window. You go out the window. So it's got a hook, you bail it in. There's a way that you basically jump out the window onto a repelling hook. But there's a whole training process. What we would do before is we call people in and instructors who were paid overtime. This time, the assistant chief can do that. There's no overtime. He can go. So that's a reduction. We're looking at New York State has a trailer it now has bailout in it. We're looking, one of our contacts at New York State asked us if we wanted to borrow the trailer for a little bit, check it out. One of it has a bailout window, so that might fall right into the back of the station. Assistant chief can run everybody to their bailouts, no overtime occurred for that entire block, which would normally be probably 2,500.
So you have to call, would you normally have to call people in to do that
Yes.
training, but you have to
Yes.
do it on the ship while they're.
On the ship. You know, when you're doing this training, a lot of times we do it at South Plattsburgh Fire Station because they have an actual bailout window that's set up with the high point anchors that are rated, the whole compliance into that too. And you bail out of there. We'll keep our engines, one of our engines ready to go, but our EMS crews and everything else that have to do it, they have to come out of service, so I have to bring in a secondary crew to just back them up during that training. There is some training we're not gonna be able to go away with that. You know, that we're just gonna have to call some people in, but it's gonna last. We're looking to do some live fire evolutions. We'll bring you out and give you a show on that. You can't go on here. Sorry. Shave it, I'll bring you in all day. We'll get it.
Unless I get paid.
We'll bring you in, we'll get it.
I'll shave mine on, he shaves his.
Oh, that's not good. So no, we're gonna be doing that, but definitely, if any of the council wants to come out, see what our evolutions are like, and we're going in, this is the current building at 911. We got pallets and everything else, we'll get it going pretty good. Do some searches, you can see how some of the operations go. We'll be doing more training like that, and I will open it up to any council who want to come and watch, what you need to pull the hose lines at a residence, how it goes about, how we do it. Knowledge is going to help you for any of your decisions you make, because you don't know how many people it takes to lay lines and big lines to hydrants. I don't want to use all my terminology because it gets people, but so that's what I'd like to be doing in the future. I think I voiced,
Pretty much everything.
I think I did everything very well.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Jake.
much.
Thanks, yeah. 5.1 draft resolution approval of street closure for Stranson area arts fall festival event, motion by Councilor Bob, second by Councilor Kelly. Any discussions? All in favor?
Hi,
Aye. Opposed, carried. Now, entertain a motion to go into executive session for a personnel matter involving particular persons. Councilor Bob, second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Now in executive session.
Would it be okay to use the? I say, pardon, would it be okay?
Oh, yeah. There's no other thing.
No, we're
good.
good.
Okay.
We sat on the side conversation. Okay,
We're online.
You can hear.
James, you know, zoning center,
Yep.
the whole of the quick.
Oh, yeah. What is it? We're all set first thing? Yeah. Yeah, he loves. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
For school executive session. She's going there. You can go there. No, just me, myself, and I. How everyone here, actually, when zoning started, it's starting to come to they started seven.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah. No, for
We have a motion to come back, we'll give a second.
Motion to back from executive session, no decisions were made, Councilor Bob, second by Councilor Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
We're back, motion to adjourn. Oh, any new business? No, nobody's in the public, all right. Motion to adjourn, please. Councilor Bob, second by Councilor Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned, thanks, folks. Thank you.